Good morning, students. I am Manikant Mishra, Modern English School, New Area. Today we are going to start to revise lesson 1, that is a chemical reaction and chemical equation. So, my dear student, as we know that the Almighty God has created a beautiful world for us, in which lot of change is always taking place. If you have a good observational skill, then you may notice these changes. Some of the changes are noticeable, some of the changes are noticeable after some times, and some of the changes are unnoticeable. Now, how do we come to know whether the change has taken place or not? On which basis we observe and come to know that the change has taken place? So, like a change in shape, change in state, change in position, change of color, change of temperature, change of composition. These are the indicators, you can say, that through which we come to know whether the change is taking place in our surrounding. Like a very common example, like you see that when you buy the nail, iron nail, and keep it, after some times we find that this grey color of iron nail becomes brown. If you cut an apple and leave sometimes, then its surface, the inside surface becomes brownish. Now, when you freshly cut apple, then it is a yellow, light yellow, but after some time it becomes brown. So what happens? The change has taken place, and you know that this change you could notice because of change of color. Similarly, when you keep the water in a pan on a stove and you start to heat, you see that liquid water change into vapor. So what happened? A state of change has taken place. The same water, if you keep inside the freezer, this liquid water convert into solid ice. Once again, your state has changed. So through this indicator, we come to know that yes, the changes has taken place. Now, broadly, the change can be classified into two categories: the physical change and chemical change. Now, what is a physical change? In a physical change, only the physical properties of a substance gets change, like a shape, state, color. If these are the changes are taken place, and these changes are not permanent in nature. After the change, no new substance are formed. Then we say the change is a physical change. On the other hand, the change in which composition and chemical properties of a substance gets changed, then we call it as a chemical change. In this change, new substance with new properties are formed. As for example, like when carbon is burnt in the presence of oxygen, it forms carbon dioxide. Now, new substance, carbon dioxide, is entirely different from the carbon as well as of oxygen. As you know that the carbon is an excellent fuel Oxygen is a supporter of a combustion. Carbon is a fuel. Oxygen is a supporter of combustion. But the new substance is a supporter of combustion, rather it extinguishes the fire. It means new substance so formed is entirely different from the substance from which it is formed, that is a carbon and oxygen. Other example also is like when hydrogen combined with oxygen forms water. Hydrogen is one of the best fuel and oxygen is a supporter of combustion. The new substance formed H2O, neither it is a fuel nor it is a supporter of combustion. Rather, it extinguishes the fire. So what I am trying to make you understand, these are the example of a chemical change in which new substance so formed is entirely different from its constituent element. Like a water constituent is hydrogen and oxygen. So these are the example of a chemical change, and the chemical change are accompanied by chemical reaction. Chemical changes are accompanied by chemical reaction. Now, my dear students, let us talk that what is a chemical reaction. Now let us talk about the chemical reaction. It is a process in which two or more substances combine together and forms a new substance which has entirely different properties from its constituent element. Just now, as we have discussed already, that hydrogen reacts with oxygen and forms water. Here hydrogen and oxygen is called reactant and water is called product. So how do we define reactant? The substances which take part in a chemical reaction is called reactant, and substance which is formed during the chemical reaction is called product. Now, the chemical reaction, there are certain characteristics of chemical reaction. Like evaluation of gas, one of the characteristics of chemical reaction is evaluation of gas. Now, as for example, Zn solid plus dilute H2SO4, then it forms ZnSO4 aqueous plus H2 gas. So evaluation of gas is one of the characteristics of a chemical reaction. Now next characteristics of a chemical reaction is change of state. Change of state, like ammonia gas, when it is a pass through hydrogen chloride gas, when ammonia gas comes in a contact of hydrogen chloride gas, then it forms ammonium chloride, which is in solid state. Now you see, the reactant is in the gaseous state, whereas in a product is in the solid state. So here, chemical reaction is accompanied by change of state. Chemical reaction has accompanied by change of state. Reactant is in the gaseous state, whereas a product is in the solid state. Next, change of color. Next characteristics of a chemical reaction is change of color. Like CuSO4 aqueous, which is a blue in color, when you add zinc metal, then it forms ZnSO4 aqueous plus copper solid. So now this aqueous solution of zinc sulfate becomes colorless. Here aqueous solution of copper sulfate is a blue in color. When you add zinc metal, then it forms aqueous solution of zinc sulfate and copper metal, but aqueous solution of zinc sulfate becomes colorless. Change of energy. Next characteristics of a chemical reaction is change of energy. Like when you add water in a lime, then it forms CaOH whole 2 plus energy. In this chemical reaction, energy is evolved, energy is liberated. In this chemical reaction, energy is evolved. So, characteristics of a chemical reaction, change of energy. So now change of energy can be in two ways. One in which energy is evolved. That chemical reaction is called exothermic chemical reaction. This chemical reaction is called exothermic chemical reaction. What is exothermic chemical reaction? A chemical reaction in which energy is liberated. Next, CaCO3, calcium carbonate. When heat is given to it, then it dissociates into calcium oxide and carbon dioxide. In this chemical reaction, energy is given to it, energy is absorbed. So this reaction is called endothermic reaction. This chemical reaction is called endothermic reaction. So based on change of energy can be in two ways. One in which energy is liberated, that is called exothermic reaction, and one in which energy is absorbed is called endothermic reaction. Next, one more, formation of precipitate. What is a precipitate? An insoluble substance is formed. During a chemical reaction, or a curdy mass is formed during the chemical reaction is called precipitate. As for example, aqueous solution of AgNO3, when it is added with aqueous solution of sodium chloride, then it forms white precipitate. White precipitate So in this reaction, formation of precipitate is the characteristics of a chemical reaction. So my dear student, characteristics of a chemical reaction is evaluation of gas, change of energy, change of state, change of color, formation of precipitate. These are the characteristics of a chemical reaction. Thank you. Have a nice day.